Have you ever wondered how a worldview outlasts the very empires that try to conquer it? Let's dive right into this explainer and explore the absolutely fascinating 3,500-year evolution of the world's oldest living civilization. We're going to trace a journey that is literally older than any kingdom, empire, or single prophet you can think of.
Now, here's the ultimate historical mystery for us to unravel. How exactly does a faith endure conquests, shifting empires and millennia, without a single founder? No fixed creed, no one central holy book. It's a pretty staggering question when you really think about it.
To figure that out, we're going to use this agenda as our roadmap. We'll start with the ancient Vedic origins, then move to the philosophical inward turn, followed by adapting to new faiths, India's classical golden age, and finally, a modern global civilization.
All right, Section 1, the ancient Vedic origins, the Indo-Aryans, and the sacred fire. We're traveling way back to the ancient plains of the Indus Valley. This is where the very first voices of this sacred tradition actually emerged. Just take a look at the sheer scale of this timeline. We're spanning all the way from the early Indo-Aryan cattle herders in 1500 BCE, through the rise of new faiths, a classical golden age, and right up to modern Indian independence in 1947.
The whole foundation of this massive history rests on a text called the Rig Veda. Composed between 1500 and 1200 BCE, it contains exactly 1,028 hymns. But here's the truly mind-blowing part. These were preserved entirely orally for centuries, no writing. Priests known as Brahmins would gather around sacred fires, memorizing thousands of verses dedicated to natural forces, like Agni for fire and Indra for thunder. They did this to maintain cosmic order, memorizing the exact tone and rhythm of every single syllable with absolute astonishing precision.
Moving on to Section 2. The philosophical inward turn, from fire altars to the forest.
So, around 1000 BCE, a really crucial shift happened. As the Indo-Aryans settled down along the fertile Ganges River and towns started growing, the culture experienced a massive transformation. People began asking some pretty profound questions, like, could ritual sacrifice alone really bring true wisdom? Because of this, the focus shifted dramatically. It moved away from those outward, external fire rituals meant to please nature deities and turned inward. It became a deep philosophical search for absolute truth, championed by wandering ascetics.
To really grasp this philosophical revolution, we need to define a few anchor terms from the text known as the Upanishads. First up is Brahman. Now, this isn't a personal god with a face or a human backstory. Instead, Brahman is the ultimate, universal reality. It's the infinite truth that exists beneath and beyond all the visible forms and names in the cosmos.
And here's where it gets highly personal. The sages meditating out in the forests realized that this massive, universal truth wasn't some distant thing out of reach. It was Atman. Atman is your individual, eternal self. Their revolutionary discovery was that Atman and Brahman aren't actually separate. The deepest part of you, yes, you watching this, is the exact same essence as the universe itself.
This profound inward turn led to the concept of samsara. In this worldview, life is not a straight line that just begins and ends. Instead, it's an endless, continuous wheel of birth, death, and rebirth. And what keeps this wheel turning? Well, it's shaped by the moral law of cause and effect, which we all know as karma. Basically, every single action you take actively shapes your future.
So you might be wondering, if you're stuck on this endless wheel of samsara, what's the actual goal? Well, the ultimate pursuit shifted from simply pleasing gods with fire offerings to achieving moksha. Moksha is liberation. It's breaking completely free from this cycle of rebirth, and you do that through deep self-discovery, meditation, and fully realizing that perfect unity between your soul and the universe.
Let's head into Section 3, Adapting to New Faiths, the Challenge of the Shramanas.
This era brought a massive intellectual upheaval to ancient India. Wandering seekers, known as Shramanas, started challenging the old Brahmin priest classes, bringing some powerful new ideas to the table. This is the movement that gave rise to major rival traditions, most notably Buddhism and Jainism. They championed ahimsa, which is radical nonviolence towards all living beings. They heavily emphasized individual meditation over rituals and strictly rejected rigid castes and animal sacrifices. But here is the secret to Hinduism's incredible survival. It didn't shatter under all this pressure. Instead, it just absorbed these concepts directly into its own flowing river of tradition.
It adapted brilliantly. For instance, it took these new inward ethics and incorporated them into everyday life through texts like the Bhagavad Gita.
In this epic text, the god Krishna teaches the warrior Arjuna all about karma yoga. The main takeaway? You don't have to quit your job and wander off into a forest to achieve salvation. You can reach enlightenment right where you are, even if you're just stuck in modern traffic. You do it simply by doing your daily duties selflessly, without any attachment to the results or the rewards.
Which brings us to Section 4, India's classical golden age, temples, epics, and devotion.
During this golden age, worship rapidly evolved into something highly recognizable to billions today. Those ancient open-air fire altars eventually gave way to grand epics like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, which brought the divine right down to earth through relatable, heroic stories. Over time, those abstract forces of nature transformed into personal, intimate gods like Vishnu and Shiva. People started worshiping them in these magnificent, newly constructed stone temples. So, the divine literally went from being a force of nature to a philosophical concept to a personal friend and protector.
And finally, Section 5, a modern global civilization, from independence to the digital age.
Let's fast forward a bit to 1947. A newly independent, secular India faced a monumental task. How do you rapidly modernize, build industries, and forge a democracy without losing a 3,500-year-old cultural backbone? Well, thrive it did. Through waves of migration and globalization, Hinduism spread far beyond the banks of the Ganges River. Today, a staggering 1.2 billion people across the globe currently identify with this ancient, ever-evolving tradition, making it the world's third-largest religion.
It's honestly amazing to think about this journey. Profound inward practices developed thousands of years ago by ascetics in ancient forest hermitages were eventually broadcast to the entire globe. Figures like Swami Vivekananda laid the groundwork back in the late 19th century, and by 1968, pop icons like the Beatles were visiting India. They literally catapulted concepts like karma, meditation, and yoga straight into global mainstream culture long before they were just your typical Tuesday night fitness class.
We'll leave you with this final, incredibly powerful quote from the Rig Veda, which was one of the very earliest texts we discussed today. It says, "Truth is one, though the wise call it by many names." This beautifully captures exactly why this civilization survived 3,500 years. It endured precisely because it was open enough and flexible enough to believe that wisdom can be found on many different paths. Which leaves us with a compelling question. If a civilization can thrive for 3.5 millennia simply by remaining open to new truths, what could our modern divided world learn from the ancient builders of the sacred fire?